Hello and welcome to the PhD Life Raft podcast. I'm Emma Brzezinski and today I am talking to the marvellous Kaisa Pankakoski. We are talking about special needs parenting alongside being a PhD researcher. We're talking about the challenges of that, but also talking about the joys of that. And we give a big mention to saunas. So I do hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, Kaisa.
Hi, Emma.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm really looking forward to this discussion, although, as we've both said, it's kind of with trepidation that we talk about this because it's very dear to both of our hearts. But yes. Thank you very much because we're going to talk about being a special needs parent and doing research work at the same time.
Yes.
all that means. Oh, my goodness. So thank you so much because as I've already said, this is such an important topic because it doesn't get talked about very much at all. But there are lots of people who are on that journey and it is a doubly difficult one. And so I'm really grateful for you kind of opening up that discussion today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I just love your podcast. I think you've had some really inspirational and interesting guests. So I feel really honoured to sort of join that crowd.
Bless you. Well, as I say, I'm just about to have another one. So I'm looking forward to this. So before we get into all of that, I'm just going to ask, as I do with everybody, in terms of tell us a bit about your journey in and through the PhD.
Right. Okay. So I just passed my Viva this summer. I know. So I feel like I'm in a really good place to look back at the PhD journey. It's been a really long journey. Right. I think anybody sort of doing a PhD is going to be really curious about things and inquisitive. And if you plan to spend years taking a deep dive into a topic, and I did spend many years, but I love doing research. I have lots of special interest topics, like an obvious one, as I lived in quite a few different countries in my adult life, is sort of languages and identities and ideologies and anything to do with them. So I did my BA in Portsmouth and master's at Cardiff University School of Journalism. And I looked at Euroscepticism in the UK and Finland for my master's dissertation. Yeah, this was back in 2004, 2005, wow. So a long time before Brexit. Wow. Let's not go there today.
That's a juicy topic. That's a whole normal one.
Yeah. So at the time, sort of after my master's, I thought, I'd like to do a PhD and maybe look at climate change and how it's represented in the media. And I'd had a few discussions in my department about doing this PhD, but then before I went ahead to apply, I got an internship working in Chile for a local newspaper, El Diario de la Discusión, in a city called Chillán. So, I was in my late 20s and I felt like South America was a little bit more exciting than doing a PhD. Oh. Yeah. So I then ended up working in the media for about 10 years until I had a bit of an early midlife crisis. And had 2 kids as well. So
were they connected anyway?
No. Yeah, maybe. So there's actually this really specific moment that I was in a sauna in West Wales where I was thinking, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I worked in the media and journalism for a long time. It was lots of short-term contracts, a lot of competition. There were new graduates every year entering the job market, and they were happy to do your job for free. Right. So I thought, I'm going to go back into academia. Why not? Right. Yeah. So it sort of appeared to me so that I should do research on multilingual families, and being in a sauna, being in a spa, or just resting or taking breaks, it's just this massive theme that I hope we can come back to in the next 20 minutes. Yeah. Yes. So having relaxation or, whatever you want to call it, is just so important for creativity and academic work.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, so a bit of background about my research. So my kids speak 3 languages because of our circumstances. But then I found that quite a few potentially bilingual or multilingual children, and also adults, they didn't speak their heritage languages or the language of a parent or both parents. Sometimes they would just speak the majority language of the country that they lived in.
Right.
So quite often the second generation immigrants or third generation immigrants don't actually speak their heritage languages. So I'm a first generation immigrant. I left Finland to study and work abroad as a young adult. And then that makes my children second generation immigrants, although they're half Welsh. But there we are. Yeah. So it was kind of a progression of my thinking to want to seek answers and do this PhD, and it just needed this quiet moment in a sauna in West Wales to come up with the idea, like, oh, this is what I really want to do. So for my PhD, I investigated 14 case study families in Finland and Wales, in Helsinki and in Cardiff, so in my two home cities. And the children spoke sort of the official languages of the country, but also another language, which could be the language of the parents, or some of the families, they had moved around quite a bit, so that's why they spoke several languages. And what I wanted to find out was sort of what were the parental language ideologies, or why did they want to transmit multiple languages to the kids, and what their strategies were, what their experiences were. And then most importantly, I also interviewed the kids, because there's not a lot of research from the kids. And I wanted to see what their perceptions were of sort of growing up with multiple languages. So I just had my Viva.
Yay!
I know, I'm so pleased. It was a really enjoyable process.
Well, that is good to hear.
Yes. But the whole PhD took me 8 years with several breaks.
Wow.
That's a really long time. I had a toddler when I started. She's now 9, and a 5-year-old, and he's now a teenager. So yes, it's been a long journey, but also I've done a lot in the 8 years. I've written all these academic and non-academic articles and blog posts, and I organized a multilingualism conference with 2 other PhD students. We have a multilingualism research group at Cardiff Uni. I've given expert interviews. I've done workshops and presentations. I'm organizing another conference at Swansea Uni in January. So yeah, it's been a long journey, but really enjoyable.
Amazing. So this is the good news story, and I love it. And I love that, just because it took you a long time, because I think people often get really caught up in this, is like, it's taking me a long time to do this. It's like, that's how it is sometimes. And like you say, actually you've done so much along the way, and you've enjoyed that process. There's nothing wrong in that. I think that there's also, which we've touched on many times before, but about this culture of kind of 3 years and done, and actually knowing that there are different ways of doing it, and it can be really beneficial to do it that way is really important to remember. So I'm really interested that your research really was about family life too. So there's been a kind of parallel journey. And so to get to that, and I want to remember what to keep this sauna in our minds as we go.
Very important.
Of space, really important, and kind of come back to that in a minute. But to just to spend a few moments thinking about the challenges of that, and the challenges of parenting alongside, and special parenting alongside this journey.
So I think we talked about this earlier. Parenting is really hard work, and when you add special needs to it, that's like another level, isn't it? So where do I start? So I watched There She Goes on BBC iPlayer recently. It was just a really good program. It shows the struggles, and obviously my experience as a parent is completely different, but when you have a child with extra needs, you do sort of grieve for the child that you did not have, and you feel really sad for the child, for the challenges they are going to face in their life, and your mental load is just so heavy. When we think about hidden disabilities, somebody with like ADHD or autism, like my son, they may appear sort of at times just like somebody who's neurotypical, but I've got quite a good radar now for neurodiversity. But anybody with disabilities, we just don't know what the massive steps are that they or the parents have taken just to be outside or in a public place, And then you think about the different therapies and treatments and medications and years of research and hospital appointments and school appointments and therapists and oh my goodness, daily phone calls from school. It can be just really, really exhausting.
Yeah.
And for me, sort of PhD was almost like a break from all this, just to be able to concentrate on something else.
I hear you. To have some space for you, because as you say, it is full on, and yeah, I think most people know. My daughter has cerebral palsy, and we have at least one appointment every week, and medical appointment, and like you say, and that's not including all the research and everything else that goes into all of that, and that's a whole nother level of attending to needs. Because of course all children have special needs because you have to attend to their particular thing that's going on for them at the time, but this is a whole kind of another level of caring and the responsibilities of that. So I love that you found sanctuary in your work, because it can be but anything else around the sort of the challenges, because you mentioned the mental load there, because it is full on and you're on high alert all the time.
Yes, you feel like you are walking on eggshells all the time. I think when my son was first diagnosed, I went to a talk. I don't know if you've heard this. They sort of compared special needs parenting to taking a flight and then ended up somewhere different. And I think that was just brilliant. Yeah. So, you're expecting a child, you're taking a flight, say, to Spain. You've done all the preparations. Maybe you've been there before, you've spoken to friends and family who had the experience. Maybe you speak the language, you've done your research about the destination, and then boom, you land in Iceland, and you think, oh wow, okay, so this is different. You need to adjust to the climate and the code, and you need to adjust everything. You need to adjust your expectations, and everything has just sort of changed. But then they said, wherever you end up, that's Iceland is beautiful too. It's exotic, it's different. It's just not what you have prepared for, and maybe you have different life lessons to learn from this place. And I felt like that was such a beautiful way of describing this special needs parenting.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my goodness. And we said we were going to try not to cry in this thing, but I can already feel myself welling up, because I feel so lucky. And I feel like it's been such a gift, and Charlotte has taught me so much. So I think that absolutely that. But it's still tiring.
I know. Oh my goodness, yes.
It's tiring. And I think that this sense of that, the amazing journey that you are on, and it can take over everything. And finding places that you can, like you say, that this work, being in your work, and the clearly, because you talk with such enthusiasm and energy about it, the way in which the work has sustained you. So finding strategies then to do that work, and the things that have helped you in that process.
Okay, so I think this applies to anybody doing a PhD, and it's just taking breaks. I'm just back from the Greenman Festival in Banai Bracheniog, and it was just so lovely to take a break and do something completely different. So I'm ready to tackle my final corrections, which is very exciting. So taking breaks. I think it's quite easy to be sucked into this an unhealthy habit of overworking, especially when you're really interested in a topic like I am. I go into this PhD bubble, and then I realized I haven't taken a break. I haven't eaten all day. My alarm clock is going off because I need to pick up the kids from school, and that's like a really good way to burn out. So don't do that. So I said I'd talk about saunas. So
you did. You did.
It's just so important to have a bit of life outside your PhD, but also your life demands. And I think it's important to have a lot of time outside your PhD and responsibilities. And I just haven't always been that great at taking breaks, because I just love my topic. It's so personal to me, and I hyper focus. And sometimes I realize that hours have passed, and I haven't taken a break. I now have a sports watch, and I have a smart ring as well, and they kind of remind me that take a break, walk away from your desk. And it's just so important to put things in the diary. Like, I do a lot of yoga, I go to a gym, I'm going to continue study Welsh again in September. So I just been for a jog this morning because I'm taking part on an online retreat after this. So it's, leave your laptop at home when you go on holidays. Well, it's really hard for me to do that, but I sometimes just take, something that I printed that I need to proofread. So just take breaks. And so I wrote this blog post about 10 self-care tips for the PhD. And I think it's important to think, what's going to bring you joy, what's going to make you relax, whatever works for you. I enjoy spending time in the nature. We go to the beach a lot as a family. I love forest and mountain walks, and I really wish I could do more of that.
Yes, I think it's that. Well, I love that you started this theme with this sense of being in the sauna and the ideas coming to you because you had space.
Yes.
And I think it's counterintuitive, isn't it? Because we've all done it. We all think, oh no, I can't take a break. I'm really in it at the moment. I'm really in it. And remembering that you can be over in it, if that is even a thing. Do you know what I mean? In terms of being, I talk about working in the PhD and working on the PhD. And when you're working in the PhD and you're digging and you're kind of there at the coalface, so to speak. Yeah. You can't always think the big thoughts, and taking time out. I call it like holiday thinking. When you are at the beach and there's this big expanse and you think bigger, you just think bigger thoughts.
Yes, exactly.
And knowing that can happen for you, knowing that taking a break and not doing, obviously not doing it just to do that, because otherwise it becomes a bit weird. But knowing that is a gift that you can give yourself, as well as and mainly for this sense of rest. And I think especially, as you say, in terms of special needs parenting, it is constant. And if you don't rest, you're going to burn out. And if you burn out, who's going to look after your person?
Yeah, that's it.
So it really, that's so important. And I just think that's such a really headline important thing in terms of relaxation, and as you say, in terms of creativity as well. And then you mentioned just going on a retreat, and I know that before you were talking about how important retreats have been to your process. So can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I often found in the first years of my PhD, I found that I was really productive when I was on a train or on a plane, like going to a conference, because it was sort of empty time when you're on your own, but you can't really do anything productive. And then I think it was in my third year, I went on a writing retreat in Scotland. It was Rowena Murray's retreat, and it was just mind-blowing. My productivity was amazing. I got so much done. At my university, there are quite a few online and face-to-face retreats, and even residential ones. So it's definitely worth finding out about that. And especially the residential retreats, I find that they are just brilliant. When and then COVID hit, obviously. So I went on quite a few solitary retreats into nearby hotels, and it was just, I didn't have to think about the mental load or anything but my writing.
Yes.
I think this was in autumn, in October 2020, when the hotels opened again. And I've been supporting my family full time, and I could just cycle a couple of miles to a hotel and be on my own, just with a thesis and my laptop and snacks and a timetable. And it was just such a beautiful, gorgeous moment. I think I cried a little, because it was just like, wow, it's just me. And I don't have to think about anybody else's needs. I don't need to deal with meltdowns. I don't need to deal with anything but just my thesis writing. And at the end of the day, you kind of stop and you take a proper break that you can't necessarily do at home. So yes, snacks being an important part of that in terms of caring for your body in that break, in that retreat time. And Rowena Murray, indeed, I had her on the podcast. So if people are thinking about retreats, they might want to listen to that episode and find out more what goes on there. But also remembering, because I think for some people they might be saying, but this caring for me is really full on, and I don't think I can get away. And I know for me it's very difficult to find anybody who can care for Charlotte because she's tube fed and all of those kinds of things.
remembering, like you said, there are online retreats that still may be possible for you, within the school day, or maybe if there's somebody who can come and be at least with you in the house. And also remember that retreats don't have to be 2-3 days. It could be 3 hours.
Yes.
And there's a brilliant book by Jen Loudon. I know I talked about it before in terms of it's the women's retreat book, but it's appropriate for everybody. But how you can set yourself up for an hour retreat, a half-day retreat, and at home, but because it's that quality of attention to your physical needs, as well as allowing space for your creativity as well. So this is such a gorgeous offering for us. Thank you, Kaisa, because it is that sense of this is really important time, and it kind of becomes sort of like sacred time, doesn't it, that you're setting aside.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I when I sort of work on my own, I use the Forest app as well, which is really good when you want to do properly concentrated work. Just one step at a time, half an hour at a time, and even that is progress.
Absolutely. And we'll put the link, we're talking about loads of different stuff here. I will make sure all the links go in the show notes. So we'll have the links to your blog post. We're going to have the links to Rowena's podcast. We can do the link to the Forest app. The Forest app, can you just explain it for people who haven't come across it before? Just let us know how that works.
Right. It's just setting up maybe half an hour or an hour at a time, doing a Pomodoro, and really turning off your emails, social media, anything that could distract you. And you decide, okay, I'm going to work for half an hour. And magic happens, basically.
Yes. It's all about the trees and nature.
Yes, exactly.
We'll leave that as a teaser. You can find out. If you know, you know.
Yes.
I'm aware of time. Mm-hmm. There's so much that we could have talked about here. I know there was a massive list, and we were like, okay, yes, we're going to focus in. But is there anything else that you'd like to say, or any? I always ask people for a top tip or top tips. So any thoughts that people could take away with them if they are facing these sort of particular challenges at the moment?
Okay. Can I talk about interruption of study really quickly?
Yes, that's really useful.
That's something I've had to take because of life circumstances. I actually, in those 8 years, I took 3 interruptions of study and 1 extension because, my son was diagnosed with ASD, and then lots of things happened, like the pandemic. And, and also there were times that I didn't take good breaks. I didn't really have a chance to take breaks. And that's why I just had to take a break from PhD. And I think, to avoid burnout. And I think, the first time I took it, I was quite worried, what are people going to say, or how is it going to impact me? But I just had the most supportive supervisors. Shout out to Dr. Jonathan Morris and Professor Jermut McGeola-Christ. They said, of course you need to take a break. It was just beautiful. And I think don't be afraid to take an interruption of study if that's what you need.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much, because I think we can't say that enough, because it seems to be such a sort of weird stigma about, well, not actually, probably not weird, a stigma around it in terms of feeling like it's a failure or feeling like it's a problem. It isn't. And it's sometimes it is absolutely the right thing to do. Yeah. And as you say, because it avoids burnout, and burnout is very difficult to come back from. An interruption, not so difficult to come back from. No. Burnout, very difficult to come back from.
I find that actually taking a break, I took 4 months at a time, and it actually developed my thinking a lot. So it was so nicer to come back to the whole PhD.
Yes. Oh, yes. And we always love a shout out to supported folks. So thank you for that.
I was very lucky.
Thank you for that. Yeah. Anything else then? Before we close. Okay. Of course.
I'll give you 2 tips, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, I wrote 40 top tips, but I'll give you 2, if I may. So I think number 1, find your tribe and support network. It could be online or PGR community, friends or family. I found you from this beautiful Facebook group called PhD and Easier Parents, and that's been super helpful. There's also another Facebook group called Bridging the Gap. it was set up by my friend Rowan, and now they have like 46,000 members or something crazy. So yeah, it's all about looking at the mental load that we do as women, especially. We take on most of the mental load and the emotional load that comes with being an adult and parenting, and especially special needs parenting. And it's just exhausting. It's unachievable. It's so hard to be perfect. It's impossible to meet certain standards in our society, and I feel like the Barbie movie really puts the message across.
Right, yes.
It's basically impossible to carry most of the mental load that goes with being an adult and raising a family, and also do a PhD. So we need rest and self-care, and we deserve it as well, and life outside of all of this.
Yes.
And second tip, I didn't write this in the blog post, but is to celebrate every step. So when you finish a chapter, or when you submit your thesis or graduation, or after meeting with the supervisors, doing a conference paper or a poster, or, they are all massive achievements. I've got this celebration coming up next year. So I'm planning to have a hat party. So,
I love that.
Yes. So my sister, she's just finishing her PhD in Finland.
Wow.
And they get to wear a top hat and buy a sword at the end of it. So the plan is that I'm going to wear my floppy hat, and she'll wear her top hat. We'll ask family and friends to wear hats, and we'll go to somewhere like a nice restaurant and have a hat party, because why not?
I love it. And I think that spirit of celebration and joy has got to be part of that. We haven't got to be, but it's an important energizer on the journey. And I think if you're going to wait until you graduate to celebrate, that is a long time to wait. And absolutely celebrating the milestones along the way, really to cheer yourself on, and to let other people cheer you on, to kind of say, oh, come and join me in this because I'm celebrating this. It is so important. Thank you so much, Kaisa, for all of this, and congratulations once again.
Thank you very much
for all this.
No, thank you.
As I say, we've touched on so much today, and we will have everything in the show notes. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it, and thank you all for listening.